Okay, thanks, Seth. All right, welcome everyone. It is November 18th, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. and this is the Scituate Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion meeting. Uh, on March 28th, 2025, Governor Healy signed into law an act extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. That legislation permits state and local public bodies to conduct public meetings in a hybrid or remote format through June 2027. This meeting will be recorded by Scituate Community Television and can be viewed live on Scituate Community Television Facebook Live. The recorded meeting will be available the following day on Comcast Channel 9 and YouTube Scituate Community Television. I'm going to go ahead and read our commitment statement. This is a safe, secure space for all people, especially people of color, and for all underrepresented people and communities. This is a space where people can bring up challenges and questions without fear. We will assume best intentions and we will treat one another with politeness and respect at all times. This committee is dedicated to these standards. We want our members and others joining our meetings to feel welcomed and respected. With that, I would like to call the meeting to order. Do I have a second? Thanks, Natasha. All right, calling the roll. Angela,
Yes.
Elena,
Yes.
Natasha,
Yes.
Carrie.
Yes.
Okay, and I am a yes. All right, the meeting is called to order at 6:32 p.m. Uh, I know Israel's absent. Hopefully we will have Shannon. Um, we have I've submitted minutes for the last two meetings, which we'll get to uh, in due course. I'd actually, I don't want to bury the lead. I've invited Maria Fenwick, and she has been gracious enough to join us. I know that, some of the recent events within the schools with uh, our friend Jamil Adams no longer being part of the Scituate Public Schools in the DEI position or lit position, I think as it was most recently, has been eliminated. Uh, I've had a conversation with Maria, and I think she's communicated with some other members of our committee, and uh, we appreciate her joining us. Uh, Maria, would you like to say hello?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Um, yeah, I wasn't quite sure what the format or agenda would be for this meeting, so I wasn't sure if you wanted me to sort of say anything or just be here as a listener. I can describe the format we've used for some of the office hours that we've offered as school committee, which we are offering again on Friday of this week and again on December 1st. If that's a helpful frame that we've used, that has been sort of just, it's a protocol called Stoplight. And so we're asking for, if you think about a stoplight, green, yellow, red, green being things that you all would really like to see continuing. So programs that you know of that are happening in our schools, that have been happening through Lit, that you think have been really valuable and that you want to see keep going. We've been taking notes and getting feedback on those. Yellow being things that you would like to see. I'm sorry, I have it backwards. Wait, do I have it backwards? Hold on one second. I have it right here. Sorry, green is start new things. So new things that we're not doing that you would like us to start doing that you think are kind of like, would be great to have. Yellow, that's things you'd like to keep. Things you think have been working really well, examples of those and what's working well, and red, things that you think, we should stop doing, things that are not working for you or kids that you know of. So that's kind of been the frame that we've offered in our office hours. So if that's a helpful kind of way to think about it. that's fine. Or I can just answer questions.
Yeah.
Understanding I'm here as a single person, I can only speak on behalf of the committee on things that the committee itself has voted on or has spoken about as a group. I don't have authority to speak on behalf of the committee. So, for what that's worth, I can listen.
Yeah. No,
I have some boundaries, I guess, but I
yeah.
can be here as a person. So,
No. And again, we appreciate you. This isn't, you know, it's not a firing line, right?
yeah,
We're all,
I know.
you and I had a great conversation a couple weeks ago. And again, um, I was emailing with yourself and Carrie Borkowski and Nicole Brandolini. And I know there's certain things that, you can't say, you can't speak on behalf of the committee, like you just said. A number of us, did attend the school committee meeting. It was probably a month ago at this point. I don't know. Time flies. I know Reverend Stewart was there, Angela was there, Carrie was there, I was there. Um, Jamil, he did make, I don't think anyone was disputing a huge impact on the community. We felt his loss just in terms of all the work that he did with us, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know what you can, and I'll turn it over to our committee to the extent that you can answer any of their questions, but um,
Yeah,
I don't know if you can like take a step back and to what extent you can talk about, the changes that are going to be coming to the schools with the elimination of a DEI specific program and moving to more of a, you know, social, I'm going to butcher the words, but social
yeah.
emotional learning concepts.
Sure. Yeah, I can talk about that a bit. And I would also just add, as a committee, over the years, we have, I think, demonstrated time and again our commitment to principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We do that not only through this position, which we, have voted for, have funded. I actually was on the hiring committee for this originally. I was part of Stride at the very beginning. I was one of the founders of that organization who really made the case for having this role. And we have been great defenders every time the public has risen up against this concept, which, believe me, they did again in that survey when it came out again. It's all still there. There's still that feeling that this is not something that the school should be investing in, and we wholeheartedly disagree with that belief. So we have absolutely defended this time and again. We have made space to expand our METCO staffing in the budget. We're constantly looking at equity in access to our curriculum, our education, the way that we're supporting and training teachers, the way that we are funding all of our programs across all of our schools for all of our groups. We're looking at data. There's a lot of different ways that equity shows up. And so that commitment remains, even though we felt it was necessary to make this difficult decision to change the course slightly to expand this role, because we saw that there were needs that were not being met. And this new role that we're envisioning can hopefully meet some of those needs in addition to continuing to have this DEI lens. So last night we approved the final job description for the director of SEA, which stands for Support, Engagement, and Advocacy. So if you want to go back and look at that meeting, the video should be available today on SCTV. We'll start hiring for that role soon. They're assembling the hiring committee now. As always, that hiring committee will be really representative. I'm not part, I mean, there'll be a school committee member on it. It won't be me, but that committee, all of our hiring committees are always representative. I don't know if any of you have ever been on, I think I've probably been on a committee with one of you at some point, but it will be done by a large committee. There will be a lot of opportunity for us to hopefully find someone who will really be able to fit the bill. And really, our hope is expand this work. We understand that this, for people who have not been sort of following the discussions that we have been having about this need, we understand that this felt shocking. There are reasons why we couldn't sort of publicly or privately kind of say, hey, this is what we're doing. That's just not something that we can do. But and we understand and we apologize that some people's trust in us has been shaken. But what we are hoping is that a year from now, when we ideally have a very amazing person in this role, people will understand that this was a good move, even though it was a hard move, and that it ultimately is what was needed for our district. So that's kind of the background on that. Yeah,
Thanks,
Carrie,
Mary.
do you want to join it or ask a question?
Yeah. Thank you. No, thank you so much, Maria, for joining. And thank you for, you and I have been in touch too, and just like really appreciate your willingness to connect with us and kind of engage in just discussing this. And I think there's a couple of things that still, at least for me, feel unanswered, I guess. So I understand the vision for like an expanded role and like social emotional learning. I think what was slightly confusing, and I feel like I still don't feel like I have a good answer on, is like when we say that students' needs have changed, like what does the data tell us their needs are now that weren't being met specifically with Jamil's role? Is question number one. And I'm not like pointing that at you or like expecting you to have a full answer to that. I'm just more voicing it out loud in case others are also thinking that, because we say like their needs have changed. And I'm curious like what that change is, what's different, what data is telling us that they have different needs that weren't being met. And then number two, just the way that it happened, as you said, was very surprising for people. Jamil was so invested in the community. It felt like such a shock. It felt like a gut punch, and now I'm also left wondering, like, so this happened, and now we're having this whole process to find a new role. I imagine that's probably going to take a year. I can't imagine we're going to have someone in that role like this school year. And so what are we doing now for students with this void that's kind of left, without that position? I think those are like the two things top of my mind right now. And as I said, mostly just to voice it, curious what others think, not expecting you to necessarily have to answer that, but that's where my mind is going as we chat.
Yep. So I think when we initially brought this role on, we were one of the first districts to have a role like this. And so it wasn't super well defined. And we, alongside other districts, were trying to figure out what does a director of DEI do. And, as that played out in our district, we saw, sort of how that worked for us. And at the same time, we also saw that we have, a lot of students with mental health concerns and challenges. And we have adjustment counselors in schools, but we don't have any sort of way to organize and support those people. And so we're not getting the kind of like vertical alignment and support that those people need to best serve the needs of kids in that space, in the mental health sort of social emotional space. Similarly, we have social emotional curriculum in our schools. A lot of that is pushed out by teachers, but teachers don't have anyone whose job it is to support them to deliver that curriculum in the way that they have, say, like a math coordinator or an ELA coordinator that supports them to deliver those curricula. And those are really important because that is where a lot of the learning and preventative stuff comes in. And so when we see that kids are still struggling with these problems, like, getting called racial slurs, and it's happening, every month, and it's not the same kid, that's a problem that we need to be preventing. And those are not the families who are attending, the MLK celebration. Those are not the families who are coming to celebrate Juneteenth. Those kids need to be reached in school during, anti-bullying programming that we need to be offering well, following up on. There's only so much we can do reactive. We have to do better on the proactive side. And similarly, there's more that we need to be doing with teacher professional development as well on these topics, because a lot of times these things come up on the fly in classrooms, and teachers need to be able to respond to them. And teachers need practice, they need confidence, they need education, they need to know, exactly how to handle that. And that is at any age. There's different age appropriate ways to have conversations when they happen. And that needs to be something that's spread out across all adults. And so, we have to really think about the ways that we're doing that, and we need to do a better job with that. So I don't know that, needs necessarily change. I think, maybe in some ways our ability to collect data on them has, we do this pair assessment that we've been doing for several years. It's a great tool, but we are not even using it. Like, there's more that we could be doing with that data. We don't have anyone to really manage that process. And so that's a whole kind of like unexplored area. And I think, there was a period of time in education where it felt like, for some reason, social emotional learning was pitted against academics. And thankfully, we've come past that to realize that the two have to coexist. It has to be both and that kids need to feel, a sense of belonging. That's really important. They need to feel safe at school. All of those things they need to feel. And in answer to your second question, we actually are hoping that this person comes on staff this year. So the goal is to, I'm not sure exactly the timeline. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I know it is the goal to get this person in as soon as possible. We talked about this a little bit last night, and they did say that, obviously hiring in the middle of the year is not ideal. So if we open this and don't find that we have the right candidates, we would wait as opposed to jumping into something just for the sake of jumping in. But the programming that has been running is continuing to run. So lit teams have been run by school-based staff for about the past 2 years. So those are ongoing. And the staff members are still running them as they have been. There is a district lit committee that was formed about 3 years ago. That is also still ongoing. Their work is really guided by the equity audit that we did. I don't remember what year that was. That would have been
last year.
Gosh, around 3 years ago, I think, maybe 4.
Yeah.
But that is still ongoing too. So those things are still happening. I can't promise that the MLK celebration is going to happen. I don't, but again, that to me feels like an opportunity for some community involvement. I think, this work of the schools should really be on what happens in the school day. We have to think about students and teachers first. And I think, to me, that is a real opportunity for some community groups to rise up to the occasion and maybe plan something for MLK. So I know that's one thing but that's just me speaking on my own. But honestly, I just don't know the timing of that. It's coming. If we want to plan, if something is going to be planned, that has to kind of start now. And I don't know that there's anyone in Scituate Public Schools who's going to take that on. But like I said, I think that feels to me like it should really a community thing anyhow. And I guess, the other thing is in supportive, in terms of other kids, in the way that they're supported, yes, we do have our counselors, we have adjustment counselors. But that staff is still here. They're still ongoing. And like I said, our hope is to just strengthen and build a real department around that. Our METCO, we're really proud to have staffed that up tremendously over the past couple of years. We used to have 1 staff member. We now have 3. I think when I first came on the committee, there was 1 staff member, and she used to describe sort of what her wildest dreams were for METCO. And, she said how desperately we needed a bus to help kids be able to stay for after school activities and get home. She described how desperately she needed to really have more school-based support. And now they have those things. And so we're proud to do that. We're happy to do that. We're committed to that continuing. And some of that METCO budget comes from the state, but some of it certainly comes from our budget too. And so, that's staying as well. So hopefully that helps.
Elena.
Yeah, sorry, awkward hand raise, but thank you, Maria, again for coming and joining us and speaking. It's nice to meet you. I don't yet have school-age children, but I will in a few short years. So I just have 2 quick follow-up questions to build on Carrie. I think what you just described is in terms of the needs either evolving or changing or just having more insight into those needs makes a lot of sense. on the job description, I had read it when it was first sent out, and I just don't know if it's evolved since then, so apologies. But are you looking for someone with a mental health background or with
Yes.
clinical experience, like a social work
Yes.
degree? If you could expand on that, and then just maybe like a part two of that, kind of what you described, and I believe my understanding it will encompass DEI work as well. Was there ever discussion around two role? It just seems like a lot for one role. So was there discussion around two separate roles? Because I'm buying what that makes a lot of sense to me. You know, it just seems like so much for one person to take on.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, of course, we would love to have two roles, but we can't afford that. So, and this is, we did look at what other districts do in this regard. And this is kind of typical for a district of our size. And like, I think when you look at anyone's job description, whether it's a principal, whether it's, the assistant superintendent, anyone's job description that you take off the shelf, you'd be like, holy cow, this is impossible that this is someone's job, probably your own job description if you all have a day job, right? Like it's overwhelming to look at. But I think what helped me understand it, is that this is a piece of a puzzle that connects to other roles around it. So when you're reading like the things that this person is doing, they are not doing all of these things by themselves. They are connecting with other people who are also taking part of this work. You know what I mean? And so I think when you sort of think of it that way, that helps to kind of situate it in that, like, this person is not like 100% responsible for everything on that list. There are other people that are doing work that this sort of connects to. And I think from the district's perspective, that missing puzzle piece and plugging that in makes the whole system flow better. You know what I mean? And so that, I think, might help like make more sense. I mean, in an ideal world, would we love to have lots of things? Yes, we would. I could think of 8 things right now that I would do if I had more money. I'd put some librarians in the elementary schools, right? I get more tech coordinators too. Like, I could think of a lot of things, and the principals are constantly sharing their wish lists for additional staff. Staff is our biggest expense. It's our most important expense. But that's just not realistic. So we are trying to sort of do the best we can for the most people with the resources we have, and that is the job. And to answer your original question, yes, you're looking for someone that does have that licensed mental health background, in part because we want them to be the supervisor of our licensed mental health staff that currently are in the schools and do not have a supervisor.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a quick question. I'm sorry, my camera is not working, so I apologize. So Maria, thank you for coming on tonight. I'm Shannon Burke. I have a first grader at Jenkins Elementary, and we love it. It's awesome. And the first thing I noticed was LIT when I came into the community, and it's been just a really uplifting and warming experience. I'm just gonna get right to the chase here with my question. I think what has happened has generated a lot of emotion is people are concerned about whether or not we need to be concerned about DEI in our community and in our schools. I know you're saying it's not going to go away, but when you spoke earlier, you mentioned a little bit of some pushback, it sounded like, from people. And so what does that involve, and what should we be paying attention to so we can make sure we're doing the things we need to do to get ahead of it?
Yeah. I mean, I think we do have to be worried about DEI in our community. I think everybody does. And this is not ever going to be one person's job to solve that. This is going to be a lot of people's jobs to solve that. And I think, as someone who, when I moved here, and founded Stride with a friend, it was because back in that time, it was like, there just wasn't as much as there is now, in terms of just people being more outspoken on these topics. And I think now there is more people in Scituate who are supportive of these concepts. So that is good. But there are less people who maybe see the urgency of speaking out about them, and not only speaking out, but showing up, like doing the things. You know what I mean? Like it's one thing to get up and say like, I'm a supporter of this and all of that stuff. Yes, that's important. But I think the most important things are like, you know, I guess it's going to sound super cheesy, but being the change you want to see. Like, I think, Stride had this like heyday when we would do these events and we'd have like, 50 or 100 people coming to learn and to talk. And we did a ton of different sessions on all sorts of different things. We did one on like Islamophobia. We did one on neurodivergence. We did one on like disability and access to public spaces. And they were great, but eventually, people stopped showing up and we stopped doing them because it kind of felt like the, there was, 15 of us and there was 12 and then there were 7 and we're all just kind of looking at each other being like, well, here we are to talk about, anti-fat bias. And it's just the 7 of us, and so I think it's just like a question of how do you keep that urgency up? How do you keep, I don't know, showing up, doing the things, not just talking about them, not just like saying they're important, but actually like being part of events and things like that around town. I mean, I think the work that you guys are doing on your committee is great. I think, when I read about the work of your committee, I think you have a lot of good examples of the way that equity shows up in a lot of different ways. It's not just about talking about identity aspects of equity. That's important, but there's also all of these other ways that you can be thinking about equity, looking at town policies that are really important. That's where the rubber meets the road a lot of times. And so I think it's an opportunity perhaps to get more folks involved in your work, in Pride, in Stride. There's a lot of opportunities here. And the negativity is there. When we read those, when people write in on the survey, like we put out the survey for those of you who are not sure what I'm talking about. We put out the job description and it actually ended up going out to the town, which is what it is. But what it meant was that a lot of people who just weren't as familiar with what was going on used it as a real opportunity to just really sound off on their points of view. Okay, you sounded off in a Google form. All right. So that those points of views are out there, but I guess at the end of the day, none of the 5 current elected members on the school committee were moved by those sentiments. The superintendent was not moved by those sentiments either. We are really focused on what kids need, and we believe that this is what kids need, and so we're trying to really keep our eyes on that.
Thank you for sharing that.
Hey, Maria. I just wanted to follow up a little bit on Elena's comment earlier about how big that new job description is, because I read it too, and it's like massive. And I hear what you're saying, and my job description also would scare anyone away. So I completely get that. But I guess I'm wondering what the pool of applicants would be like for someone who has the credentials that I think we clearly need. And I mean, I have 2 kids in the school system. I think you know that, right? And my son is in the TLP program. So like, I mean, social emotional needs all the way in this household. So I'm all on board with more support for that. But to have that skill set is like one thing. And to have the skill set for true DEI expertise and leadership is sort of another thing. And so I wonder when you're trying to merge those together, like how likely are we to find a person that will have both of these expertise in a way that will be like actually beneficial for all the things we need them to do, right? And I know that's kind of speculating, but I just
I mean, I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, obviously, and none of us do. So I think I actually don't think that DEI and SEL are as separate as people make them out to be. I don't understand kind of where that narrative is coming from, because I don't understand how a person who is truly, working on and towards social emotional outcomes would be able to do that without a DEI lens. Or I don't think the two are actually as separate as a lot of people think they are. So I don't know that I agree with that premise, I guess. But, you know, I don't know. I think we're going to try. We're going to see what we get. And hopefully we do get someone that is able to do all of this work. But I also will go back to what I said earlier, in that DEI cannot live in one person in one role in or out of our schools. It has to live in a lot of roles. It has to live in all classrooms. It has to live in the administration, in the curriculum, in the budget, in the school committee. You know what I mean? And I think some of the places where we went wrong, maybe, were assuming that things were fine and that a box was checked. And I think that we have to all own a piece of this and think, that we are not putting this in one silo and saying, okay, this is taken care of here. This is where the DEI gets done. I think we all have to reevaluate that mindset and think about how this kind of fits in all the ways. So that's my other personal point of view on that, is just like, it's wrong to think that this is going to be only this person's job and it's going to be, therefore, like make or break.
So just to follow up a bit, so I think there are definitely parts of like social emotional learning that are DEI. I 100% agree with that. And then there's parts of mental health, like true mental health, right? That is nothing to do with DEI. It's
Yes, I
mental
agree.
health, right? Issues.
Agree. Yes.
So that was, I think, my differentiation there. But also, like, so as I'm hearing you talk about this, it sounds like we need more curriculum in all the classrooms, right? For both social emotional health and for DEI.
Yes.
So will this new person be hopefully bringing us some sort of curriculum for both of those things that would then be more widely implemented?
Yep. I think one of the first goals is to have this person evaluate what we have. Like I said, we have this data set sitting here from our pair data. We have plenty of teachers who have thoughts and ideas and questions, and kind of know what's needed, and ready to sort of say. So I think that's going to be the first thing, is to figure out kind of that needs assessment, and then go from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, Maria. Thank you for coming tonight and joining us. And
Sure.
I also want to say, thank you for being consistent with your support for diversity, equity, and inclusion. I remember when the committee first started and all the Stride events that you spoke of, and, myself and my family have participated a lot. So again, I appreciate you coming tonight. And I think the concern with most of us, if not all of us, was the way it was handled. Like you said, it came as a shock. Jamil was important, his personality, and that's hard to replace. Everything that you're saying as far as the new position, it makes sense. I've actually spoken to friends that work in other school districts, and they made this change. One of the Brockton made a similar change a couple of years ago. So I reached out to an adjustment counselor, and she says, there were some good things that happened, some things that they had to adjust. So again, I think we'll, like our commitment statement, we assume good intentions, and I think the school committee has good intentions. And my other point or question I had is, when is the hiring or the process for hiring? I know you said there'll be other people involved, and I know students will be involved, which I think is wonderful.
Yep. Yes. So we approved the job description literally last night, so it's hot off the press. And so I don't know the exact timeline, but I know that they are eager to get it out into the world soon, so they can start getting applications. So I think if any of you are interested in being on that committee, I think it would be a great ask of the superintendent to include a representative from your committee. I mean, can't hurt to ask. So, and I do think in the past, we've had representation from different committees on those. Excuse my kids. So I think if you'd like to do that, maybe one of you could email the superintendent and just ask. I think that the committee has not been formed yet, so now is the time to inquire about that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Maria. I mean, the only thing that I would add to all of this, and thanks everyone for the great questions, and thanks again, Maria. Um, Maria, you and I discussed, you talked about how, DEI isn't the job of any one person. And I think all of us on this committee, and we've been at this for a while, but I would still, if we were to take a survey of the town, I would say probably 5% or less know that we exist, right? So, and we're not trying to hide either. Um, I'm actually surprised when people around town actually know that I'm doing this. And usually uh, it's a good discussion, and a couple times it has been the opposite of a good discussion. Um, to the point where at one point I was accused of being at the fore of hiring Jamil Adams as the DEI director for Scituate Public Schools. Right? I mean, it was comical, the misinformation that was out there. Uh, it was a lively discussion, but it's not about me. The thing I wanted to kind of get to is, and you and I talked about this briefly, is um, both your involvement or the school committee's involvement, and I think Nicole's going to work on that, making sure that we have the presence of a school committee member attending our meetings, at least on a semi-regular basis. That would be helpful. Jamil again played that role. It was almost in an unofficial capacity. He just kind of just started showing up to our meetings. And he just kind of became part of the fabric. But vice versa, on occasion, someone from our committee attending school committee meeting. Again, not you guys meet every other week, I assume, or do you meet every week?
Yeah, we meet every other week. We're
Okay.
actually trying to evaluate right now all of our various subcommittees and liaison roles
Yeah.
because we have like millions of them, and like why are we liaisoning to the zoning board? I don't know. So we're
Right.
trying to figure this out and sort of like cull down our like sister city. I mean, I don't know, it's lovely. We love sister city program, but like why are we liaising to them? You know what I mean? So we got to figure out like
Yeah.
our priority list. And it feels like you guys are probably one of those, but like the rec department, maybe like, so
Yeah.
we're Nicole and I are actually getting together tomorrow to kind of hash some of this out and figure out like which are the committees that we should be attending regularly, which are the committees that we're just like on the email list and reading the agenda to make sure there's nothing that we should be knowing about and going to. And then maybe some of these committees could come to us sometimes because we were like
Right.
always the ones going. And it's a lot of meetings for us. And then we also have our own subcommittees that meet outside of our regular meeting times. And that is just a real lot of meetings. So
Yeah.
that said, yes, we're going to try to figure this out. We would love to make sure we're in more regular contact with you all. I also think it might be nice. So we can put you on our agenda to give like an update, like once or twice a year or whatever
Yeah.
frequency makes sense, because we have a bit of a larger platform. And so if you are on our agenda
Exactly.
giving an update, you might get more eyeballs and ears on what you guys are doing.
Yep.
So like I
That's
read,
why I brought it up. I
yeah,
mean,
so I think
just
that is easy. Anytime you want to do that, you let us know. We can add you. It usually takes like, you know, 2 weeks to a month to get on our meetings, just depending on where in the cycle of meetings
it's
we
fine.
are and how well the agendas are, how full they are and whatnot. But that's pretty easy. And I think that would be a great first step. And then obviously we'll work on figuring out how we can better, connect and attend
Yeah, I mean, I
with
think it
you
would help
guys.
build awareness, certainly. And I mean, DEI it's a bit of a boogeyman right now.
Mm-hmm.
And to the extent that we can talk about it and
Yeah.
um, demystify it a little bit,
Yep.
and some of the work that we do, which is, you know, highlighting elder care. I mean, you
Absolutely.
know, uh,
Yes.
you beach mats for the disabled. I mean, that was more. Um, why am I drawing a blank on his name? That was more Connor Doherty than it was us, but we had a bit of
That's
a
great.
hand in it, right? So, I mean,
Yeah,
stuff like that. So that people hear about DEI and they just think in the political realm, and um, it'd be nice to dispel a lot of the myth.
absolutely. Two more quick things about our meetings are we are much more formal with our agendas. And so for us,
Yeah, I understand.
we have public comment always at the beginning of our meetings, like right at the beginning. And if we have no one there to make a public comment, it's over at like 6:02. So if you miss it, you miss it. And then it is basically us having a meeting in public. And it feels very like that. And so like if you're in the audience after public comment, there's no way for us to acknowledge you or like for you to jump in. And so I just want to put that out there in case like it feels it's very weird for us. It probably feels weird for you, but I just want to make that kind of distinction because if you show up at like 6:30, you will have absolutely missed that portion. And
We've
it's
done
then it's
select
just
board meetings, so we get it.
okay, then it's just us talking to each other and it just is different. But
Yep. Yep.
we had actually planned to do these office hours prior to any of this. In part because we have also some potential redistricting coming with the new elementary school. And so we wanted to, some other school committees do this, institute these monthly office hours. And that is an opportunity anytime there's only two of us, so therefore not a quorum, we can actually have more of a conversation. And so we're planning to continue those this year. And so that's another time that if anyone ever wanted to come and have more of like an actual conversation or just like share something, you can keep your eye out for those. We have, as I said, one Friday, another one December 1st, and then in the new year, we hope to continue those monthly as long as we can get enough of us to put them into our schedules. So
Okay.
just wanted to put those out there too.
Okay. Um, does anyone else have anything else for Maria from our committee? Okay. Well, thanks again, Maria. We run our meeting, like we usually end our meetings in an hour. We might go a little over tonight, but you're welcome to stay or you're welcome to drop. But thanks again. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. I will maybe stay for, well, are you going to talk about like what you're up to? Because I did want to hear about that a little, but I have to go at 7:30. So, um,
That's fine. People start giving me the evil eye if we go past.
okay. But if you
Like
want to
I was
debrief,
everybody's
I also
favorite.
understand. I can
We have a
also
lot of parents with
head
young
out.
kids, and they start showing up in the background
Yeah, that's
if I
what's
go much
happening over
later.
here too.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, hang out.
Okay.
And again, thank you. Thank you. All right. So moving on with the rest of the agenda, and it's been um, actually let's just do a quick order of business. I I submitted the minutes for I want to say July 23rd and September 30th. Does anyone have any commentary on either one of those minutes, or can I submit them for approval? Okay, I don't see any raised hands. Um, this is probably against the rules, but I'm going to move to accept both July 23rd and September 30th minutes. Uh, can I have a second?
A second.
Thanks, Angela. All right, calling the roll. Ms. Dre,
Yes.
Reverend Stewart,
Yes.
Ms. Galata,
Yes.
Ms. Sun,
Yes.
Ms. Burke.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm a yes. Okay, so we will get those submitted and I'll get them posted to the website. All right, library. Did that meeting take place? Okay, great. Um, so one of the things that we've been doing, and Maria, for you, and I think we have a few other attendees on tonight's call, but and they can speak if they would like. But so we go, department by department. Some in over the years we've been at this for I want to say like 4 years now. We spent a lot of time with social services. We've spent time with DPW. We spent a lot of time with public safety, the police department, the fire department. I'm leaving out some the veterans group, Council of Aging, and so forth. And the Scituate Town Library they've been active in just a lot of efforts around town, including the lit events, DEI, and so forth. But we hadn't really had a formal meeting with them to talk to them about, opportunities, some ideas that they might have. So I'm in the dark like everybody else that didn't attend that meeting. Who attended it? Bob, I'm sure you were the shepherd. Who else? And Carrie
I
and
did.
Elena?
And
Elena
Shannon.
and I did. Yep.
Okay, take it away.
Elena, you have the great notes that you emailed out. Maybe
That
you
now
take
that
it.
now I don't remember. Yes, perfect. No, it was, I mean, it was an awesome meeting. Let me pull up the notes. So yeah, it was great to get some background just on how they approach DEI in general at the library. Some of it was probably is not new information necessarily for some of us, but it was just great to hear how they really don't they think about DEI really as a core philosophy in everything that they do at the library. And it's not like, hey, these are our DEI initiatives that we're going to do on a weekly, monthly, et cetera basis. It's really ingrained in every part of their programming and book selection and really just like every single thing that they do at the library, which is obviously it's amazing to hear. Their goal is to ensure that everyone can see themselves reflected in the building, materials, and programs. They're guided by the Library Bill of Rights, which is incorporated into all of their policies. That was new information for me. So that was interesting. Um, their goal is not to create separate displays for LGBTQ plus, for Black history, for all of the, celebrating Black authors, et cetera. It's again to incorporate authors that represent diversity in all of their displays while also still celebrating, Pride Month or MLK Day, et cetera. They've also done programming with the Cape Verdean Society, with the Sister Cities program. We talked a lot about the reconsideration form, which now I'm forgetting. Carrie, do you remember what that was about?
Yeah, they had
Oh,
mentioned that like if like a community member comes into the library and like disagrees with something they had on display. So this happened during Pride Month.
yes.
They heard from someone that like, didn't want a Pride Month display up or whatever the case may be. They can like there's a form that people can submit to ask the library to reconsider, programming or books. And yeah, I mean, they shared that it happens, on the regular, not like an everyday occurrence, but also not that unusual for something like that to occur. But the way they handle it is, really great. It seems like everyone that submits a form, they'll call directly and like have a conversation and kind of find out where that's coming from and have a discussion. So was yeah, really impressive kind of how they manage all of that.
Yes. Thank you for filling in the blanks.
Who did you meet
Um,
with was it Jess Finney or?
Yeah, it was Jess Finney and also Ian Lattenville, who's the assistant director of the library.
Okay,
yep.
thanks.
Then we talked about just hours and staffing. And again, some of this stuff is maybe obvious to some, but was very enlightening for me. They're open 64 hours per week. So that's comparable to the Boston Public Library, which is incredible. They have 14 full-time staff compared to Hingham's. And they just use Hingham as a comparison point that they're only open for 50 hours per week, but have a staff of 20, right? So we're open more hours with less staff, which again is incredible. We talked a little bit about funding and how they're funded. They're primarily town funded. They receive a small portion of state aid, which is contingent on meeting certain requirements, which they typically do meet. Then they have Friends of the Library, which fund programs and things like museum passes, and then the Library Foundation, which supports larger capital projects. We talked about they very often will request more funding from the town for one more. Jesse talked about having one more full-time staff. And we talked a lot about what would they do with that one more full-time staff. And a lot of what they talked about was more programming within the schools. So it's interesting, Maria, when you mentioned earlier, like you wish on your wish list is like more librarians in the elementary school. I mean, I don't know if you meant that to be like school staff or library staff or what have you, but she mentioned a lot that they try to get a librarian from the library in every single school at least once a year or maybe twice a year, but that's like 7 to 10 days out of the library then, right? Based on all the schools that they have to visit. I might be getting that a little bit wrong, but essentially it's a lot of time, and they wish they could do more, but they are limited within the schools, specifically within the elementary schools, because the middle school and the high school do have, Maria's nodding like, yeah, I know all these. They do have full-time library staff at the school. So again, that was all just like really interesting. And I think it had a light bulb moment for all of us when we think about like our charge as a committee on like making recommendations to the select board. I know we did this with the social work need, right? When we saw that there was a big gap in our social work, the staff for the town, and maybe this is something we could explore. And again, it's things the select board have heard before, but if again it has more and more backing from other committees and other voices, it could support the library in their efforts with the school, within the schools specifically. So that was really helpful for me. And then we talked also about gaps with Jamil's departure, and because Jamil also did a lot of programming with the library and the lit nights that were happening at the library. It doesn't sound right now. There's a desire to continue the lit nights, but not a plan right now for them. I think it's a gap where they don't really have someone on staff. Like Jamil was, I believe, a trained facilitator in that capacity, and they don't have someone that could fill that gap, that has that training or have that background that could continue those lit nights. She also talked about maybe somewhat refocusing the lit nights to be more focus on local Scituate topics or conversations, just to make them I think feel a bit more impactful within the local community. But she did mention that that could be a topic that our committee potentially helps. I don't know necessarily, I don't know if any of us are trained facilitators, but maybe find, the right resources to help the library, continue those discussions. And anyone feel free to jump in, but we also
No.
talked about training and resources. So their staff does seem very well versed in DEI work and efforts, and a lot of that comes from their own training. I think they have to do certain training certifications. I went off and I was like, oh, we always want to look at like training opportunities for town employees, but some of these seem very library specific and like only available to staff of the library. So not necessarily something that we could ask other town employees to necessarily take. Oh, sorry. I'm rambling. I don't know if this is helpful.
You're not rambling.
I hope it is. Okay. The other, if they were able to get town funding for an additional employee, not only would that help school, like to be more involved in the schools, which would be great, it would also help roll out an actual volunteer program. So the Scituate Library does not have a formal volunteer program today because they do not have a full-time staff to manage the volunteer program. And this is something that other libraries in surrounding towns do have. So the volunteer program could involve like two pillars from my understanding. One could be teen volunteers, which would be awesome. And the second would be tax abatement volunteers. So these are, I learned people that are 60 plus. It's a tax credit. And there's interest, there's typically interest from community members to volunteer at the library in this capacity. But again, because they don't have enough staff to manage a volunteer program, they do not have volunteers right now at the library. But if they had one more full-time staff, you get more support in the schools and get a volunteer presence, which would seem great.
Absolutely.
There's a few other notes, but I'll pause. I don't know.
Well done, Elena. That was an amazing recap. I think you covered everything. For me, so you covered everything super comprehensively. I think the takeaways were like where we could potentially collaborate and help, because the library is really nailing it with DEI. Like they're amazing, but like where we could help support them, it seemed would be with the lit nights, right? Like so they're really feeling sort of the absence of Jamil facilitating those. They don't have capacity to facilitate them with their existing staff, as Elena said. And so I feel like we should add that maybe for discussion for our group. What role could we play to help with that? Could we help them find someone? Could we help them rescope how that looks? Like what could we do in that capacity? So that's number one. And then number two would be, as Elena mentioned, just backing, their requests for additional staff or, whatever they feel that they need. Like if there's ways that we can help back them with the select board, we'll definitely be up for discussing that. So I think those were like the two takeaways in terms of like action items, like how can we be involved?
Okay.
Maria, you had mentioned lit, I think, when you were talking about this new position. And I think you might even had, maybe I misheard this, but I thought you said that you were also continuing to look at maybe some team members continuing to help out with sort of the lit project. Did I mishear that, or is that?
Um, so the lit teams that are at schools are actually run by staff members at each individual school, and they have been for the past couple of years. So those are consistent and will continue. There is also a district lit committee that is comprised of just kind of like principals, teachers, department chairs, and that committee will also continue to go on their work that is steady. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, but I guess in terms of the specific the programming that Jamil had been doing with the library, is there any
Yeah.
possibility that they continue to be supported in some way from the school department?
Not right now. No. That so my I had one question about that. How frequently were these nights happening at the library?
My guess is other people chime in. Maybe quarterly.
Quarterly. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
I was gonna say
Three.
every 8 to 10 weeks based on like emails I would receive about the events.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and to be honest, I mean, most of them were not school oriented.
Right.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
and it
So
was interesting, like what they shared with us at the library, it sounded like the genesis of these events came from like a teen focus group where actually teens sort of said we really need a space where like adults can come and have conversations about what's going on in our community. And
Really?
so
That's nice.
yeah, which is pretty cool. And I would guess, I would feel like it's safe to say that that need probably not only continues to exist, but is even more exaggerated currently. So, like, I can't imagine that need at a very basic level for like a place for like community conversations for adults together and talk about like what's going on in our town, whatever that may be, is there. And so, how can
so
we think about that?
I actually thought that the genesis of those was Stride. So Stride used to host these community conversations at the library, and we invited Jamil to come as a guest once, but they would be on different topics. So initially, when Stride first was founded, it was in November of 2019, so right before COVID, and then everything went virtual. And then once things opened up again, we experimented with trying to do things in person at the library. And we called them community conversations, and they were great for a while, but again, like we just needed that energy and more people to sort of carry them forward. So to me, I think this could be a real opportunity for some of our community focus groups to take that on.
I
Yeah, I
wonder.
mean, I attended a handful of them. Some were really well attended, and others, pretty sparse. I mean, it just kind of depended on the topic. I'm sorry, Natasha.
That's okay. I'm just wondering, listening to all of the this conversation tonight, I guess, and like particularly the needs of the library and their wishes, if since we're an advisory board, right, to the select board, if we could advise them that it would be a really great idea to hire one more person for the library who could be a volunteer coordinator. And under that, they could coordinate the teens and the tax abatement, and they could coordinate the lit nights. And if that is getting the district lit committee to come in and help lead them, or finding other people who can facilitate them in some way via Stride or whatever organization, they could kind of coordinate those for them. And then I would assume that this person would also probably be like a library professional, right? So they could go to the schools and add that support. So that adding that one position to the library could open up a whole bunch of support to the community on all levels, right? On all ages, right? The school-aged kids, the teens who are still in school, but teens, and the older folks who need the tax abatement, as well as all of us parents and everybody else who's out of school and doesn't fall in any of those other categories, right? And are interested to learn more about community engagement and
Yeah.
DEI. I think that's a real way that we could kind of make a difference as a committee is to advocate for that. And I don't know if we get it, but that's not our job. Our job is to advocate.
I totally agree. I think adding on to that, like one of the other things that Jesse said is that with this role, they'd also hope to increase their presence at community events. She used like Fall for Scituate as as a small example, but I
Yeah.
also think like if Jamil's work was some of these like MLK Day celebration, right? And like Maria, you kind of voiced that that's not really it's not during a school day. It's not maybe the role of a school employee. Maybe that's where, and I don't know if it's the role of a library staff member either, but maybe it's a person that could help, right? It's like on one more town employee that could potentially help in the coordination of a town celebration. So I feel like we just wrote the job description, but I definitely agree that putting our recommendation behind this role, I don't know if it would make a difference. I'd like to think that it would, but at least at least we're taking action with something here.
Do you guys ever attend capital planning, or like do you are you familiar with that process at all? Okay, because
Somewhat
I'm just
familiar, have not attended.
okay. I was just thinking about like I did it once as a school committee representative, and basically like you sit there as like a panel and you hear from every department. They come to you and they tell you what their long range plan is and what their needs are, and then as a committee, the five of you sort of vote as to like what you are going to say yes to, not for this year, but like for 2 or 3 years down the road. And so when I did it, it was like I learned so much about trucks, salt sheds, like sewers, just all the things. I see the town in a whole new light now when I drive past an ambulance. I'm like, oh, I know all about that ambulance. But it's really fascinating because it's like the process by which the town sort of like looks longer term and tries to balance all the needs that they see coming. And so I think, I have no idea how the library budget works. I have no idea how much this costs or like where this would fall, but it just sort of makes me think that understanding that process could be really interesting for this group in particular, because like sometimes that process, like how it all shakes out, knowing that process, how it works, how to engage, is like, I don't know, having access to it, I guess, is just really helpful. And I
Yeah,
think when you're trying to think about advocacy for anything, whether it's this or something else, just kind of knowing that playbook could be really useful. So just
I
put that
mean,
we
out
usually
there.
just ask Bob.
I mean, I can speak to it a little bit, but I mean, the budget process, we actually did this very recently, and so each department head will sit before initially it's just the town administrator and the finance director, and then I believe the advisory committee,
Yeah,
and propose a budget. And so I can speak to last year. I think that and always, I mean, Jesse every year has advocated for additional staffing.
yeah, I've
And
heard
then
her advocate
yeah,
for
yeah.
that.
And then I
Yeah,
think that this one past year, we actually were able to increase one of her part-time people to full-time, which helped a
yeah,
lot in terms of staffing in the children's room, which I think was sorely needed.
yeah.
But I can speak to the year before that. I know that there were 11 separate requests for increase of staffing. 11,
Mm,
11 FTEs, and the
mm,
town was able to fund one of those 11, and that
yeah.
actually was a position that we advocated for, and that was the assistant director of the Council on Aging. So that was the only one
Mm,
position we were able to add last fiscal year. So,
yeah,
but that being said, I think it certainly doesn't hurt for us to kind of, put in our 2 cents if there's something that we think sort of, checks a box for us. There's no harm in some advocacy. So I think it's
mhm,
heard. So, but ultimately it's sometimes it's tough sledding, but you know, I'm not, it's still, I think, ultimately worth um, advocating from our perspective.
Absolutely. Okay.
I have to run, everybody, but it was great to see you all, and I look forward to connecting more with you all in the future. So Tom, maybe you and I we'll definitely be in touch. And like I said, Nicole and I will talk tomorrow and
Absolutely.
put our heads together about how that might work. And again, thanks for
Thanks
having
again.
me tonight, everybody. Okay,
Appreciate
take
it.
care.
Take
Bye.
care.
Yeah.
Bye.
All right. Yeah, so I mean, so with regards to the library, it sounds like an excellent meeting. Should probably have a follow-up with them. I think it was either Elena or Carrie who just said, looks like we just wrote their job description because I was scribbling down notes myself. Because I mean, that's what it's going to take. I guess my question have they already gone to the town and asked for this and been turned down, or is this a new request that just kind of germinated out of your meeting?
Oh, no, I think that that's been on the table. They've asked for the additional position. I don't think
Okay.
any budget decisions have been made yet, so.
Okay. All
That's
right.
my
Well, yeah. I mean,
understanding. I could be wrong, but
we can,
but I think that's the status.
So,
yeah, it's been a while since we got in front of the select board. It's probably, we're overdue to do that regardless of whether we're even asking for something, but just to update them on, what we've been up to. So, I mean, it's probably not going to happen until after the first of the year. I mean, let's be honest, we're going into the holidays and so forth,
I,
but
I
this is,
think Jesse was before the select board, maybe the last select board, I believe she presented her budget, for the select board last 2 weeks
okay.
ago today, because I'm meeting today, so I think it was 2 weeks ago. Yeah,
All right.
I could be
So
wrong.
it's
so
probably,
I wonder if the follow-up then is like Elena and Carrie, or just because you already started the conversation, go back and meet with Jesse and see, or email her even. Well, what do you have a job description that you're thinking of? And here's the list, right? I wrote down notes too. I'm happy to share them. Of the things that we thought of and maybe how you could frame that, and then we can support what they've done. And Bob, of what I think I'm hearing from you is they've already gone before the select board recently. So we need to actually get before the select board like before Christmas because they're probably making budgetary decisions now for next year, not later.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd want to try to get a better handle on the process, whether or not it's presenting to the select board or some other sort of forum. But, so I think I'd probably want to maybe have some conversations on this end about the best way to proceed with that. And I can certainly do that and communicate back to people.
okay.
I just don't want us to be spinning our wheels if it's like, if we're before the wrong, if we're
Right.
using the wrong forum.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, if we need to go in front of a budget committee or something, then that's
Right,
where we should be.
right.
Absolutely. Yeah. So
Okay.
maybe we can, I know it's the holidays. Just do some, and I know I am none of the people who are doing this work. So, but I feel like this is more timely than like pushing it off.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. So I think it sounds like, yeah, Bob, if you look into that on your end in terms of like what the process should be, and then maybe Elena, Shannon, and I can sync up and just probably makes sense to email Jesse even while like in parallel while you're doing that, Bob, just to be like, hey, we discussed as a group.
Sure.
Here's what we discussed. Here's what we think. What are your thoughts on this? Would they appreciate us doing that? Or, for all we know, they may not want us to. Like, we don't know. We didn't ask. So
Right.
let's do that. And then we can kind of share what our thoughts were. So
That's
yeah, maybe
perfect.
Elena, Shannon, and I can work on that.
Sounds
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, if if they feel it's useful for us to get in front of the select board for even 10 minutes to advocate for this before the holidays or whenever, we'll figure it out. Yeah.
Agreed.
We have a raised hand from Katie Scopoletti. I'm sorry, I probably just butchered your last name. Katie?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, sorry. It wouldn't let me like do a chat or anything, so I just raised my hand. Thank you. So I think I've met a couple of you already. So I'm a public member, live in town, have littles, probably a little bit older than Elena. I can turn on my video too. No, it won't let me. So all good. I'll just stay on unseen. That's fine. But I've met with Rev Natasha before as well. And essentially all I wanted to say is as a public member, I know there are community members that are trying to figure out where is the best place to house these conversations that really Jamil was manifesting district wide. And I can tell you there are community members that are meeting. And if there is opportunities for people to meet and support even your efforts, again, if you guys decide to take a public stance at a public meeting and you need public support, again, just finding like a way for the public to know that you need support so that you can get that as well. Because I do think there are more people paying attention, do know you exist, and do want to support you, believe it or not. I know more people they know you exist than you think.
Good to
And
hear. Thank you.
yeah, and it's just kind of the reality of, again, young families, time commitments, work, all of this, the same reason every single organization struggles to kind of get volunteers is a reality, but I do think a lot of people care about this topic, the work that you guys are doing. And again, as a young parent, I absolutely like want to see a place for diversity, equity, inclusion visibly seen throughout town and like you said, ingrained in the culture. But unfortunately, Jamil's not here. I also think very fondly of him as well. So again, just kind of putting that out there to the committee of just like if there's a way that like the public who may not be able to attend all your meetings can know ways to support, especially if you need like a public showing, because I do think that people care and they just don't know where to go right now. That's all.
Thank you, Katie. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll echo what Katie was just saying. I think there's a lot of people in the community that are very concerned. I've had a lot of people come and talk to me about it, not just Katie. And they need a place and something to do, right? So to help with this. And I think we do have a lot of community support for DEI in Scituate in general. So I appreciate you, Katie, bringing that to the attention of this whole group and reminding us that we do have a fan base that we can pull from should we feel that that's like a helpful thing with our advocacy as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
not
and
for
we have talked in the last couple of meetings. I know, Natasha, we've had some Wednesday meetings. Those aren't good for you, but we have talked at length about the Situate Unity Network. Is that the current name?
Yep.
It's no longer the
Done.
Spaghetti Club or
Yeah.
yeah. So and Natasha's been heavily involved in that. There's obviously Scituate Indivisible, which is more political and activism and so forth. But I think those of us on this call we do communicate about this type of stuff, and but I do know that there are, a number of people, of a like mind that are trying to make sure that we don't lose sight of these things in town. So sometimes we feel a little beaten down, at least I do. I watch the news too much. But I appreciate what you said, Katie.
Thank you. Tom, I just wanted to see if we had an update on our town web page. I know we talked about, having resources and updating it, but I think to Katie's point, and it's wonderful to get the positive feedback from the community, and I think we do have a lot of support, but maybe we can, put a statement out there or just, look at, something we can do so when people are on the town website, they know we're here, we want input. I don't know how people would reach out to us. Do we have a current list of the committee members and email addresses? I just want to get the feedback from the community. And I received an email from someone I haven't had a chance to respond with, again, with questions and ideas for our committee. So I think because of Jamil's, sudden leave, people are concerned. And, it's wonderful to, hear that we have support. But I think as a committee, maybe we could be doing something on the town website just to, let people know we want to hear from them.
So almost um like a virtual Dropbox almost.
That, or I don't know what it looks like. I'm just thinking, we do have, yeah, great.
Be allowed to create, so like it doesn't have our personal email addresses listed on the website. I'm not sure if that's allowed or not.
Or if we could create like a
Yeah,
mailbox. How about
right.
a DEI mailbox?
Could
A
we
Gmail that
create
goes
like
in.
a Scituate DEI@gmail.com? Maybe that's
Yeah.
not the name, but something.
Something like that, and we could all, a couple of us can monitor it, and we can get, people can reach out to us.
Yeah, I think that's a really good start. And then I think we should continue thinking about how we can just be more maybe transparent about the issues we're discussing. We post our minutes, but like to go to our page and then click on the minutes links feels like a barrier. So like, is there a way we can just kind of like once a week put on the website or out somewhere else, like, here's the topic for tonight's DEI meeting, welcome to join as a monthly reminder. Something that's more obvious and transparent and sort of out there to people that's accessible, just to let people know what we're talking about. Like, this is what we're up to this week. We're talking about the library. Next week we're going to be talking about, X, Y, and Z, something like that.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Who's good with working with websites?
I don't know. Shannon is. I don't know.
Did you just call out Shannon?
Well, she went off mute, so I just figured. She also owns her own business. I figured she's better than I sell my soul to a
I do
corporation. I
too.
don't do
Well,
anything.
I used to, but I have an IT guy. So
Yeah, I'm familiar with Squarespace. I know how to use that platform. But I know that one is costly and there's other alternatives, but I know how to manage a front end UI. So, um, whatever it is that we need to use, I'm sure I can figure it out.
Is social media a terrible idea? Like, should we think about that?
Terrible idea.
I think Facebook is
I,
less ideal than Instagram if you're looking for, to avoid the commentary, because that's where you find it is on Facebook. So, I mean, and you can also, I don't know, depending on the content, but I feel when there's town pages on Facebook, people find them and it's pretty, even if not a nonpartisan topic, people find reasons to comment. So I don't know.
we might have to, yeah. So and this is a great idea. It's probably something we should have, looked harder at a while ago. Because the frustration sometimes is that, okay, well, what can we work on next? What can we ultimately, within our charge, take to the select board to really make a difference, right? Um, I don't know that we are, pigeonholed to using the Scituate Town website. I don't even know, Bob, I'm not sure if you know. Um, do we develop an offshoot of that? Do we have a Facebook page? Uh, I don't know. I try to avoid Facebook and Instagram, but it brings me back. Um,
I think it would be awesome. And Bob, I don't know if you're like our person to help navigate this with the town. Like, if we just could update the town website with Carrie's idea and an email address, those would be two great steps, I think. And that's, yeah, to be honest, like, I don't know if I think social, I would be probably wary of going off in social
I mean, I
media.
have admin access and I've tinkered with it, but I'll spend like 10 minutes on it and I'll get sidetracked with other stuff and then I don't go back to it,
I'm
right?
happy to help look into it. I just like, I don't know if we're allowed, like, are we allowed to create our own email address?
Well, so I actually, I just, while we're talking, I looked at a couple of the other sort of committee pages, and I think actually what happened, it's not an email address, but some of the pages have contact information. So if you look at the bottom, it says contact information, and when you click on that, it allows the person to send a question, and then it's linked to
A
an email.
form.
Basically, yes. But I don't know if that person needs to be. I don't know if it has to be a staff person. I don't know if it's the administrator for our site. But I can certainly, so we can do it. So I don't know who that would email goes to, how it's, how they're notified, I think maybe you can even have that email go to multiple people, to be honest with you. But I can certainly research that and get back to people. I think that there are some, um, even like, Angela, like Sister Cities, right? That's a committee, but you guys have your own Facebook page, right?
We do. We have a page.
So I think it's allowed.
Yeah, it's not a group. So a
Right.
group you have to, so it's a page, and all the town committees have pages where they're just sharing information. So we post our events, people can email us, and they follow the page for information. It's been fine. We've had no issues with it at all. But I don't know how many events we would have, and if this committee is really set up for a page. I think it's just, updating, and I have access now. Tom, for our committee as well, and I can play around with it. I think it's just putting contact information in Gmail, you know. I mean, like I said, I've gotten emails directly, because people, know I'm on the committee, but I think, it should be, a committee mailbox that people could reach out to.
Another thing we may possibly want to do, if we can do it, is a newsletter, like a quarterly newsletter of sorts. And then on the contact form, they can check if they want to subscribe to get updates from us. That way, once they reach out, we're able to stay in contact and inform people of different things that we want to share.
Okay.
So, I can research some of those possibilities and report back next meeting.
That sounds good.
No, I mean, there's a lot of good ideas. Shannon, I'm going to nominate you. Sorry.
You can't see my face.
That's why. Exactly. But I'll send you an email tonight or tomorrow, and like maybe we can grab some time on Friday or early next week and just kind of brainstorm this out a little bit.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Does that work?
Yeah, I'm up for it.
All right, cool. All right. I know we've gone way over. I apologize, but there's been a lot to discuss. Um, there's still, and I think we discussed this in our last meeting or maybe even the previous meeting before that. And I don't think I really have time to get into it tonight, but uh, the town library has been evaluating their commitment statement. And I did go back through our archives, and it's funny, and I don't want to go through all the history, but when because we used to use a different commitment statement back when we were calling it a safe space statement or a brave space statement, and we went around and around, and I'm going to try to make this really short, but we got it approved in front of the select board, which is the statement that most of the committees are reading today, and then we changed what we say. All right, which is a little crazy, but that's what we did. Um, and I don't really recall why. I went back and I was watching the old videos, like when did we change it? I looked at some of the minutes. We talked about this a lot and we scrutinized every word and then we changed it. And we've just been rolling with the same commitment statement ever since. Uh, so I have a note from a couple of people on the I think it's the library. I don't even know what this committee is, but Kevin Carlton, if anyone knows Kevin, and then he wants to include Chris Mararchi, who's the vice chair of the library board, and they want to discuss it. Um, so I emailed with him last week, but I have not been able to actually connect with him. But I'm going to try to explain that a bit to them because I think they have reached out and they're looking hard at their statement, and I don't really have all the backstory on that. So just FYI. Um, okay. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to discuss tonight?
I want to invite everyone to our Santa Catarina celebration Saturday at Untold Brewing.
Oh,
It is November 25th is our St. Patrick's Day, which is our St. Catherine of Alexandria. So come between 1 and 4, it's family friendly. There'll be crafts for the kids. There'll be a little Cape Verdean food to snack on with music. And So Sabi is the name of the brew that they made for with pretty wrapping paper that shows our sister city. So if you're around Saturday, come to come by. Untold
So
Brewing.
this Saturday.
This Saturday, the 22nd.
Okay, cool. All right. Thank you.
You foresee,
Elena, did you have something to say? Sorry.
yeah, sorry. Just do you foresee us meeting again as a committee before the end of the year?
You guys tell me.
Let's see.
When
I
would
don't know,
it
but
be?
as we're having a discussion about meeting times, it would be nice if we could get back to a set, like it's always the third Thursday of the month or whatever, because that's
I'm
it's
to
just
blame.
much
I've been
easier. And when
yeah.
I am scheduling an abundance of things to know to carve out that time. And if you ask me a week or two before, it's much harder for me to be flexible. So
Yeah, I mean, I'm blaming myself 100%. I've started to travel a lot for work, so that's why I've had to like kind of screw around with this a little bit. But um, so the third Tuesday of every month.
Are we going to third or second? Did we used to be second?
I don't remember.
we used to be the third.
Third?
I mean, if we're looking at like December 16th, that sounds great,
Yeah,
for example.
yeah.
And so I will say I just had a meeting moved, but I should be able to make it because it ends at 5. So yeah, I'll just be in meetings all afternoon. It'll be awesome. I'll
Okay.
just come and be like, I'm still on Zoom 4 hours later. But I can,
It's something crazy and meet
Welcome
in
to my life,
person,
Natasha.
yeah, we can meet in person. Just at the library.
Yeah,
It's really easy for me, right across the street.
yeah. Yeah, so thank you for bringing that up. So yeah, let's try for third Tuesday of every month. Okay. And I'll get that into the agendas. So yeah, December 16th, we will meet again. Um, all right, cool. Does anyone else have any other business? Okay. I would like to call to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Elena. Okay, Reverend Stewart,
Hi.
Elena,
Yes.
Angela,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Shannon,
Yes.
and I am a yes. It is 7:57 p.m. and the meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Appreciate it.
Good
Thanks
night.
all. Enjoy the rest of the week.
Yeah.
Happy Thanksgiving.
You too.